What's going on, my fellow Dungeoneers, and welcome to For the EXP, a YouTube channel dedicated to Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop gaming alike. My name is Brent, and I will be your host / Dungeon Master for this show. And welcome to Episode 7, or Session 7, of Campaign Diaries. We are all currently caught up, which I'm stoked about. I'm finally glad to be caught up. I think that Super Campaign Diary, which was the last episode that I did, really helped out in that aspect. Although I did skim over a bunch of cool details that happened within those sessions. That's why if you watch the Campaign Super Diary, I encourage that you ask questions down in the comments of that video. Now, let's go ahead and start up with a quick recap of where we left our party off. Lyneth and Remidia, Eilon's master from the Feywild, had shown up to answer a message that Navarre had sent for Eilon in return, and felt that it was necessary that she show up and talk to them personally about the problem at hand. She sensed the urgency in Eilon's message, so she showed up by interplanar travel within Navarre's tower known as the Obsidian Tower. And during this time, the party was having Ancano decode a secret message that D'Angelo had gotten off of a dead body of what he suspects to be a nightingale. And during that conversation with Ancano, Navarre came downstairs with Lyneth and Remidia, and they actually teleported with the magic of Remidia's bardic magic. They kind of like dimension doored up to the top of the tower so they could talk more privately. Long story short, Remidia had actually did like somewhat of a magical soul search into each one of the players, and they had learn a few things about their past and their present and their potential future. Eilon had learned about why he has draconic lineage in his Eladrin bloodline. Durgan learned about the past of Gonfarum, the dwarven city that fell down to the Dunmerry Shogunate, which they found out the Dunmerry Shogunate is actually the group of Drow, Duergar, and Deep Gnomes up in Gonfarum and underneath the mountains of Astria's Maw. And they all learned that they were all somewhat intertwined with their destinies and with their past, that they have something to do with each other. They also learned that Norik had also learned that his friend was closer to the mountains than he might think, and thus giving him a hint at where his future goal lies. He also learned that his goal of finding mysterious and unique armors could be also found down in the south sands of the Vasto Morte Badlands. And then D'Angelo, he learned something a little bit more unique. He learned that the city of Inla Nalore has been protected by an ancient green dragon through the barter of the elves, that they would give once a year an elven female for him to feast on. And he has been posing as a high priest of Corellon, the elven god of life. And what everyone had always thought was that this elven priest was always taking these females as his wives, which really shocked D'Angelo, and I could tell it just on his face, and he immediately had questions for me. Why would there be a green dragon? Why would they make this deal? That will be needed to be found out in future sessions. So, after they had all these soul-searching experiences done with Remidia, they ended the conversation with Remidia giving Eilon a new magical bracelet that gives him +1 to his spell attack and spell save DC, and the ability to cast Shield 1 time per short or long rest. And the item itself is called Remidia's Protection. It's sort of like a representation of Remidia's care for Eilon and the need for him to be safe and protect himself. So I thought it was a really cool story magical item. One of the things that was really scary about me giving this item to Eilon specifically was that I did not want my player to think I was choosing him as like a favorite. I just felt like it was more story appropriate. And so don't worry, guys, you'll have your chance at some magic items here soon enough. Now, after the conversation, they had made a deal with Navarre that he would sponsor the party and give them a place to stay within the Obsidian Tower. So, of course, they had to go get their stuff from the Copper Cockroach, right? They had to bring them back home so they could have their accommodations set and perfect, their home base set. And as they were walking out the door, a young courier had brought them 2 mysterious letters. One was more obvious that it was from the Baron himself, Baron Galidon Crescentwind, the current Baron of Bloodgulch Crossing, wanting to speak with them specifically about the information they know about the Nightingales. And then they had received an almost nearly anonymous letter. It was dirty and ragged, and it was about the same thing. This person wanted to know what the party knew about the Nightingale, which is this legendary group of assassins and thieves that most people write off as non-existent and some people fear with their lives. The person didn't sign the note itself, but they said go to the Black Runs Inn and ask for the son of Blood Gulch, which my party deduced that this had to have been Mercer Frey, the opposing member against Baron Galladon Crescentwind, who was running against him. It was a great assumption because eventually through vigorous conversation, they had decided that they were going to talk to the son of Blood Gulch first and then go speak to Baron Galladon Crescentwind second. And so they made their way to Black Runs Inn. This inn is actually a historical monument landmark of Blood Gulch Crossing. It was the original fort that Talos Icebrand had used in his campaign against the Ravenclaw clan. This was ages and ages ago. This is by far the oldest monument and building within Blood Gulch Crossing, and it was eventually turned into an inn. And the inside of this inn was all brick, the original brick. It was basically not necessarily restored, but maintained to so it didn't crumble and fall apart. So it had its still old rustic look, but it looked new and livable-ish. And then there was this suit of dwarven armor that immediately caught Norik's eye, and of course he went and inspected it. The party itself kind of sort of examined the area, make sure that they weren't followed, that they weren't getting the stink eye from anyone. There was plenty of sellsword-looking types here. There was plenty of guards here. There was plenty of gladiator-looking people here. So they got a real sketchy vibe immediately. They thought they were going to get set up. At least I assume they thought they were getting set up. That's based off of what they were saying to each other. But eventually Norik had a broke conversation with the barkeep Feldar, a dwarven blacksmithing fellow. He wore like the same blacksmithing apron he probably wore years ago before he retired as a blacksmith, and he just was a grumpy old dwarf. And through the conversation of asking about the armor that was posted up as a decoration, he had learned this brief knowledge about the history of this inn, Black Runs Inn. And eventually, the party had gotten some drinks. More specifically, Norik took an frostbite shot that is a magical shot, actually, that if the person fails their fortitude save, or well, not fortitude, this is old school D&D player here, but it was a constitution saving throw that he had failed, and he got like an immediate brain freeze, which gave him disadvantage on intelligence checks for a minute, and he took a point of frost damage, which I thought that was kind of funny. If he had failed his dexterity save when originally taking the shot, it would have the hyper cool glass of the shot glass would have stuck to his mouth, kind of like that kid from A Christmas Story with his tongue on the pole. Eventually, after kind of waiting out the area, kind of blurting out Durgan's name, the letters themselves were originally addressed to go to Durgan. So the party had actually excessively used his name in hopes that someone who they suspect would be the son of Blood Gulch to show up and approach them, because they had no idea who Mercer Frey was. They had no idea what he would look like. So, of course, they waited out to see if someone approached them about the son of Blood Gulch, which after a long while, no one had. So Durgan and Norik and the party had approached Feldar, the innkeep, and asked about the son of Blood Gulch, which quickly had them led downstairs underneath a trapdoor behind the bar down to a campaign room where there was plenty of banners, blue banners themselves, kind of like parading Baron Mercer Frey for Baron. They all were supporters of Mercer Frey. And the one thing that I didn't realize when I was planning this whole political election day thing, was that I didn't realize how well it lined up with the current election in America. And so I got asked a bunch, or at least I got asked a bunch by my party members if I had just done this because of the election day. I was like, I didn't even think about that when I was actually creating this. So it was super coincidental for me. It seems way too coincidental to be made up like that, but it really truly was. I did not mean to make an election thing going on during election season. It just happened that way, which I thought was kind of cool. Really, it's really thematically appropriate with the real world and kind of relatable, I think. So they went downstairs and actually met Mercer Frey. He's this solid snake-looking guy, shoulder-length brown hair with a patch over his left eye, looking all grisly. I mean, he still wears his leather armor, just the chest plate of his leather armor from when he was a guardsman back in the day, and he introduced himself thusly: "My name is Mercer Frey, man of Astria, son of Blood Gulch, and your next baron if you have me." And this entire room filled with supporters of Mercer Frey kind of erupted in a cheer, "Yeah!" and basically had the entire party kind of thrilled. And that's where we cut off on session 6. Sorry for that long, quick recap, but I can't help but leave out the details now that I can, that this isn't a super campaign diary, so I can actually do details. So when we began session 7, we obviously started in the campaign room when they started talking with Mercer Frey. And Mercer Frey immediately kind of got to the point: "What do you know about the Nightingales?" And the party basically found out through conversation that Mercer Frey only knew just about as much as they did about the Nightingales. In fact, the party probably knew just a little bit more. They just explained to them the evidence that they had given to Glynabella, the captain of the guard, in session 5 or 6, I think. And he almost lost his shit. He was like, "No, I can't believe you told them about this. They're going to bury the information." And because Baron Galladon Crescentwind and Glynabella, the captain of the guard, are avid about burying this information, or, well, keeping it down low. They don't want to, their whole thing is that they don't want the public to know about it, because, not because they want to keep them in the dark, but because they feel that if they tell everyone, that they'll cause panic within the city, to prevent fear-mongering, that they keep all this dangerous stuff happening in the city quiet. Mercer Frey himself is really keen on keeping people in the know. He wants to let everyone know what's going on, what the dangers are, because Mercer Frey wants to enable more security within Blood Gulch Crossing. He wants to not necessarily lock down the city and not let anyone come in, but he wants to put checkpoints at the entrances, check in on everybody, do background checks sort of, and like keep track of who's coming in the city, because dangerous people in an open door type city can get in easily and cause a problem for the citizens. Now, I think I got an immediate positive reaction, especially from Durgan, about keeping the city itself in the know, and they were kind of suspicious about why would Baron Galladon Crescentwind want to keep his people in the dark and keep them ignorant. After kind of having a little bit of a temper tantrum, Mercer Frey kind of calmed down. He was like, "Okay, well, now you got to keep this quiet. If you keep telling Glynabella or anybody else about this information, it'll get buried and no one will know, and it'll never get solved." And so basically, to help his campaign out, his campaign for political office for Blood Gulch Crossing, he wanted the party to go down into Talos Icebrand's tomb, which is located in the Garden of the Divine, just south of Westgate. He wanted the party to go down in the tomb itself and retrieve the artifact weapon known as Frostbite, which was the weapon used by Talos Icebrand in the fight against the Ravenclaw clan. So essentially, it was kind of like a grave robbing type mission. And he had sworn up and down that this was not meant to be evil. This was meant to be used as a symbol that his campaign was blessed by Talos Icebrand himself, the founder of Blood Gulch Crossing, the folk hero of legend. And the party kind of got behind that. I don't know if they truly did or not. They had stated they were going to remain neutral to the whole subject, that they hadn't quite decided if they were going to help him, but that you could tell that there was a little bit of inner turmoil with some of the party members, because they didn't feel quite right of grave robbing, that it seems kind of wrong. But and there were some people who thought that Mercer Frey was just going to use this weapon as a tool of power and use it to enforce his law, but he swears up and down that it's meant for good and meant to be a symbol only. And through various insight checks, they kind of all learned that he was telling the truth and that he seemed genuine. Now, throughout this conversation, Eilon had done something really clever. He had been using the minor illusion spell to send whispering messages within the ears of Mercer Frey, using Mercer Frey's own voice to sort of remind him that he needs to compensate the party for their work. He had not said what he was going to give them for helping him out, or any kind of coin value or whatnot. But Eilon I don't know what he was exactly planning on for compensation, but he had stated several times over that it wasn't specifically coin, but just something. He wanted the party to be compensated for the work, and Mercer Frey had not stated any sort of compensation. So throughout this conversation, the party kind of seen him stopping and thinking to himself, because Eilon was casting minor illusion spells on Mercer Frey, causing him to think to himself like, And most of these messages were like, these people were chosen to be here. Are you not going to compensate them, or are you not going to give them something for helping you? And so at the end of it, the party itself all together said that they were going to remain neutral for now, so they can go talk to Galladon Crescentwind, Baron Galladon Crescentwind, and find out what he's about and see whose side they're going to side with. So the party ended up leaving, Black runs in finally, and along the way towards Baron Galladon Crescentwind's mansion, for past few sessions now, the party had actually been getting feelings of being watched. It seemed to be an overwhelming theme throughout their travels through Bloodgod's Crossing. They had this overwhelming feeling of that someone was watching them, and there had been this reoccurring tiefling, the only tiefling they've seen in this city, just kind of walking around minding his own business. But it's one out of all the perception checks they make throughout the city, because they have had this feeling of being watched. They always seem to notice him, but he didn't quite seem to be paying attention to him. Well, this time on the way to Westgate, they had got that same feeling again and did a perception check, and they saw this black tiefling staring directly at Eilon. Now, the reason why this happened was Eilon has been searching for a member of the Blood Gulch Underground known as the Merchant, and throughout asking several vendors and merchants throughout Merchant's line in Blood Gulch Crossing, they had been just telling him over and over that you don't find the merchant finds you. So he's just kind of been putting out the word that he has been looking for him, and so the party altogether kind of suspects that this black tiefling is the Merchant. And because they were on a mission, they were already going to see Baron Galladon Crescentwind. Eilon kind of walked over to him and said, "Meet me at the Copper Cockroach tomorrow at this same time." So they had a verbal agreement, but the black tiefling had not said a word. He just nodded his head and walked off. So that was super cool. There's this one thing that Eilon's been trying to do is find this merchant, because he wants to buy some sort of magical item. I don't know necessarily what he wants to buy. He keeps saying he wants to buy a ring of protection or whatever, because he is the spellcaster. He has a low AC, so he wants to be a little more protected, and that's understandable. Excuse me, but that all depends on how much gold he has to spend. The party was beginning to approach Baron Galladon Crescentwind's mansion. This was this red brick Victorian-style home with 2 chimneys on the east and west side. The east side has been billowing smoke, and there was several guards along this estate. Obviously, this is the Baron's house. Why would he not have guards? And there's 2 giant fountains in the middle of the yard with a flagstone walkway going straight up to these giant cherry oak doors, and it just looked beautiful and immaculate. And the party just kind of showed the letter to the guards, and they let him right through. Obviously, this was sealed by the Baron. Of course they're going to let him through, because they needed to talk to the Baron. The Baron called for them. So they're just follow the orders and let the party through. And they eventually got to the front door and was answered by a humble servant to Baron Galladon Crescentwind. They inquired that they were looking for him and showed him the letter. And of course, he went and let Baron Galladon Crescentwind, and they were led to his study. Now, this study was wall-to-wall books, from floor to ceiling, wall to wall. It looks like this room was supported by bookshelves, so it was almost like a small library, if that, a medium small for a library in my opinion. And Galladon Crescentwind was patiently reading his book, and as the party kind of introduced themselves, he held up a finger. And a few moments passed by, and he closes his book, and he stands up, and Baron Galladon Crescentwind is this wood elf, dressed all fancy. He has a black hair pulled ponytail, wears a faded, a light gray, pale gray button-up shirt with a purple vest and purple suit pants and black, and just really nice. He almost would be mistaken for a butler, but his outfit's not black in typical butler attire. He's clearly the Baron. He has a rapier sitting on his side, and one of the notable things in this room was a painting of this man, this super charismatic man whose cocky smile, you could almost sense his arrogance and cockiness off the painting itself. And over the conversations they had with Baron Galladon Crescentwind, this was a painting of Talos Icebrand, and you can see this painting of him with his trusty weapon Frostbite at his side. Now, this particular conversation got really, really heated with the party. It was almost really scary. I thought I was going to have to send one of my party members to jail, but I remembered one thing. But we'll get to that here in a moment. They had begins talking to Galladon Crescentwind, who had often reminded them that he was their betters. He talked down to them constantly. He had a very pompous ass attitude, and I loved it. A lot of the parties loved it because it just rang with him. I think Galladon Crescentwind is going to be one of the more memorable NPCs of this campaign, just because he utterly pissed off like 2 of the party members right off. He talked down to the party all the time, constantly referred to himself as their betters, and the only 2 people who were able to maintain a proper conversation with him was Eilon and Durrigan. Over the course of the conversation, they kind of got Baron Galladon Crescentwind's side, saying that Mercer Frey was a brute who only wishes to be a fearmonger and spread calamity throughout the city, and that Galladon Crescentwind wanted to keep the city open so that the city itself can grow even larger than it already is, because Bloodgold's Crossing is a trade city. It is a dead center within Astria, at least center north of Astria. There's a lot of trade going there. If you're coming from the south, this is the first city you're going to see that you could sell and trade things. That's why there's such a huge merchant line. And so Baron Galladon Crescentwind, who's been the Baron for a few decades now, with his experience, believes that this is the best route to go, to keep the doors open, let all who wish to enter come in. His belief is that if the people of the city know about the dangers that lie ahead, that it will spread fear and calamity and cause mass panic, and that's just not good for the city. So he prefers to keep everything done on the down low. Now, he himself had a specific request of the party. That's why he asked them here. But before he got to his request, he had insulted D'Angelo so much, talking down to him, telling him that he was just a peasant to him, basically. And D'Angelo had spit on his floor and said curses at him. And at that moment, I had thought, am I about to send D'Angelo to jail? Am I really going to do this? And then I remembered something. There wasn't exactly any guards within the building itself. It was just him and his servants. And so even if he had sent D'Angelo to jail or called for it, he would have been able to get away before any guards actually showed up. So I decided to let it slide. And because the Baron himself, he had something he requested to request of the party. A rumored group of bandits to the south of the city had been attacking trade caravans, and preventing new people from showing up within Bloodgold's Crossing, which obviously is counterintuitive to what he wants for the city. He wants the city to grow from trade, and if no one can get to the city from the south, how is it going to grow? So obviously he's wanting a trusty band of adventurers to, in fact, go down there and eliminate the bandits. And of course, like any other good RPer, they ask him, why don't you send your guards to do this? Don't you have a specialized group for this? He didn't. Bloodgold's Crossing hasn't been attacked in several decades, several hundred years, so this is the first occurrence that he's heard about in recent times, so he hadn't actually needed some sort of specialized shock troop force to go take out local bandits. After a short while through the conversation, and after Eilon had asked many questions about Talos and kind of the history of the city, he had also asked about the Ravenclaw clan, because they had just been hearing about this Ravenclaw clan that they hadn't got real information about, and Baron Galladon Crescentwind was able to give him a very general history about the Ravenclaw clan. The book just had the picture of the symbol itself of the Ravenclaw clan, and there was actually no title on it. It was actually for once written in common compared to all the books they've had so far and all the papers they have read. The coded book note that D'Angelo had, and the angelic celestial book about Lake Gemstar and the star crystals, they have all been in foreign language, so they were quite relieved for once that they got a book that was written in common. Baron Galladon Crescentwind had actually promised the party, had said that he would allow the party to elect a council of advisors to the Baron so that they could help guide him to a better Bloodgold's Crossing, a better city overall. But he didn't actually quite say that he was absolutely going to do it. It was only if and only if they did his task, and if he won the election, which he was going to use that task to kind of bolster the morale of the city and let them know that they are more safe and get on Galladon Crescentwind's side of the things, because there are no more threats around the city, so they'll be more open to actually leaving the doors open to the city. Before the party had left, they had stated once again that they were going to remain neutral for the time being, so that they can mull over what they really wanted to do. Basically, what they were using this time to do was to choose Mercer Frey or Galladon Crescentwind. Whose side were they going to choose? And one of the few things that it seemed to really stump them about who they were going to choose, because originally they were all favoring Mercer Frey about telling the people what's going on and providing security, but then they recognized the experience and knowledge by Baron Gelidon Crescentwind, and the fact that his mission for them seemed a little bit more noble than grave robbing. So eventually they all came to the conclusion that they were in fact going to go and down south of the city and take out these bandits. So they eventually made their way back to the Obsidian Tower, where they were going to sleep for the night and prepare for tomorrow, where they head south to take on these bandits. But during this time, D'Angelo had a little bit of a thing he wanted to do on his own, because he had just recently found out that his city is being protected by a green dragon in exchange for sacrifices of elven women. He wanted to have a book that explaining the weaknesses and natures of green dragons. So he went down to the College of Magical Sciences. He went down to the College of Arcane and went to go there to specifically look at their library and their choice of books to see if they had any books on dragons. And of course, this is an Arcana college. Why would they not have books on dragons? And if he went into the Crimson Archives, which was this huge, it was just like Baron Gelidon Crescentwind's study, but like times 3. And there was this grumpy old half-orc who was kind of minding his own business. Here comes D'Angelo asking about green dragons, and of course they had one, and he pointed it, and it just so happened to be at the very, very top corner of the entire library. And D'Angelo had found it and went down to request to purchase it, and the half-orc looked at him and was crazy. "You really wish to buy one book out of an entire volume of books?" And so basically, D'Angelo ended up paying 50 gold for one book, because the half-orc had stated over and over, like, look, you're buying one volume of a plethora of volumes of dragons, and so now we have an incomplete set, so now you're causing us a problem. But through D'Angelo's keen mind, he had insidered the half-orc and found out that he was just coming up with a shit on the spot. But he still paid the 50 gold, which was weird to me. He didn't try to haggle the price. He just gave him begrudgingly gave him the 50 gold, and was just really tired of this day. He was so tired of being talked to like a piece of shit, talked to like he was an idiot. He just wanted to get his book and go home. Now, when he returned to the Obsidian Tower, Islan had noticed that he had his book, and in fact got the same idea. It's like, why didn't you get the rest of the books? And he's like, well, I didn't really need all the rest of the books. So Islan got the smart idea to go back down to the Crimson Archives and go get all of the volume of the books. But the librarian was gone. He had gone down for the day, and the only person there was this rugged halfling bearded man who was just kind of cleaning up the floors. And of course, Islan had did something that I was kind of surprised that he did. He went and stole the rest of the volumes. And he kind of convinced the halfling he had convinced the halfling janitor to help him heft these books all the way to the Obsidian Tower, which wasn't very far away. The Obsidian Tower is like literally right next door to the College of Magical Sciences, so it wasn't that far of a trudge. But the fact that Islan had kind of stole it for the sake of their knowledge and had convinced the halfling janitor that he had actually paid for him was kind of really funny to me. Who knows if that might come back on Island. Now, once they settled down within the Obsidian Tower, Durgan had kind of like a team meeting, kind of explaining to everybody, like, hey, look, guys, I'm all willing to go head first into anything with you guys, but we need to remember respect. We need to not go to jail, because he was kind of talking specifically to D'Angelo about his outburst against the Baron, and almost positively was sure that he was going to go to jail because of his outburst towards the Baron. So he kind of wanted to remind everybody, hey, chill out. We're going to be okay. Let's just help the Baron and get the right person in office. And that's where we ended the session, guys. They kind of went down to sleep for the night, and they were getting ready to go on their adventure towards the south to find these bandits who have been attacking trade caravans. Now, the thing that kind of upset me about this session was I didn't realize that I had ended it early. We had been going for maybe 2.5, 3 hours, and I felt like the conversations were so heated and intense that it felt like this had been going on for almost 4 hours. So I got really into it, and I didn't have true track of time, and that's truly my fault. I'm sorry, guys. We should have had a little bit longer of a session, but overall, I think it was a great session. It was really one of my favorite sessions so far. I'm really excited to see how things turn out. I kind of know how things are going to go, but I obviously don't know what they're going to do. Great session, guys. Great session to everyone who was watching this. Thank you so much for watching. We have broke 40 subscribers over the week, and I'm super happy about that. I feel like that I'm really getting my groove going on with these videos. I'm going to be coming out with a new Monster Spotlight soon. I have another series idea coming that I'm kind of working over in my head. So be in tune for that. Thank you guys for sticking around with me, being my supporters. And always remember, guys, no matter what it is in life you do, do it for the XP. Have a great day.